fired it up. Can't find it specifically listed in the Twitch game directory, by the way. So I put it under Half-Life. But what I'm looking at is Half-Life Caged. It's a modern mod from one of the original Half-Life developers. And it's darn interesting. And I have all sorts of trouble running it in full screen mode. So I run it in window mode for now. A menu that will be familiar to original Half-Life. I ain't seen this for some time. And I'll get going in a couple of minutes. To do that. Where did the music go? Hey?
Announcement. Prisoners who are dead must report a change of status to their nearest prison officer. Violations will result in a penalty of 5 gruel credits. Automatic announcement system suspended. Activating prisoner audio pacification system. Loading.
Half-Life Cage. ready to do this, select the level of difficulty. You can have easy and medium hard. You can have developer commentary. Oops. I was just checking something. Cup of tea, bit of chocolate. Oh damn, I can't get back into the game now. I'm going to put the developer commentary on. Play.
Hey, and welcome to a Kaylee George game, a Future Games Select game. I think there's some comedy in working on a project in tech that's almost 20 years old. And perhaps there's a subtext working for a tech like this, which would maybe read something like, simple problems with overly complicated solutions. But you know, I love it. Old school stuff like this is awesome. It's so fun to work in tech like this. Something elegant about making games in these older BSP-based editors. Sometimes creating the simplest things in these old engines is just so involved and so complicated. It's awesome. Yeah, I just fucking love it. This intro here was conceived pretty much to set the mood and set the tone for the game. I wanted to give the player the slightest semblance of a background story, or perhaps lack thereof, before we throw them right into the prison cell. And I think there's something nice about starting the game off kind of mellow and on an even keel. And also really it was just a good opportunity to flex my muscles on scripting in this engine. And I think Laserhawk's music in the background really makes it what it is. Caged was originally a much smaller map, released as a collaborative project back in 2002. It's part of a project called Quantum Leap, where you jump between the creations of different level designers in one mod. And I always wanted to polish it a little bit more, do something a little more in depth with it. And so here we are 15 years later, working in dead tech, and this is what it's become.
Will we ever make it out of here? I'm not certain. No! I don't want to die! Arrgh! Arrgh!
We're not going to bend those.
I've got to get out of here!
Chapter 1. Scheduled termination.
Hello there. With my brain, I'm slowing you down, am I? Yes. All right. I'll wait right here.
Scheduled terminations will take place at 0:00 hours.
Not long.
Announcement.
Building
Better turn it up. Quick.
tension and the building of suspense. The different elements of foreshadowing and layers that come together to build a mood for the player. And I'm not talking about your normal foreshadowing, like the palm tree sunset picture on the wall of the prison. which is a nod to the finale to Cage, but to all the little pieces that come together to make this cell a memorable experience to the player. The dialogue from the player's cellmates, the sound effects in the cell, and the visual effects around the cell all build to a climactic escape. In the original release of Cage, the intro cell was rather bland. The player turned the valve on the pipe and it blew a hole in the floor, but the prison didn't really react. It didn't come to life, it didn't engage the player, and it certainly didn't care that the player was escaping. In reworking the scene, the goal was exactly that. It was to bring the prison to life, to have it react to you escaping, and to try and stop
to go
you.
another step.
And this type of reaction is important. It shows the player the consequences of the world in which they're playing. It sure as hell motivates them to get out of their prison cell and jump down the hole.
Why do we all have to wait? You smell what I smell? I hope that odor isn't coming from you.
Destruction.
Glad to oblige a fellow scientist. Yes, let's go.
Announcement. Prisoners reporting self-violations. Receive 10 additional crew credits.
Only 3 minutes.
You're going to have to leave me here, Gordon. This is... My God, what are you doing? I certainly hope you know what you're doing. That sound. What is it? Oh, no. Oh, dear!
The toilet plunger here is a nod towards amazing game Roger Wilco. One of the things I always liked about Roger Wilco was that he referred to himself as a sanitation engineer, which of course is just a nice way of calling yourself a janitor. Something about those games that always intrigued me. I don't know, maybe it's because it was that kind of brutal era of games where the slightest mistake at some critical moment would cost you the game. Leisure Suit Larry's from the same era. I mean, that game can almost be even worse. I mean, one of the first things you do in that game is you're plopped in front of a bar, and there's a street corner, and you try and walk in the street, and bam, game over. Why would you walk in the street? Now. And all those games were trial and error. Everything's out to kill you, ruin your fun. I don't know, it's a guilty pleasure, I guess.
How the heck? I don't believe it. One jump.
One of my favorite movies of all time is Escape from Alcatraz. One of the best scenes in that movie is when they finally escape. They break out of the back of the prison cells, and they're climbing up the pipe and ductwork between the different prison blocks, going up to the roof, escaping. But you can see that they're in this space where they really shouldn't be. They need to be quiet. It's claustrophobic. Things are unfamiliar. It's not a livable space. And as you're watching this, you're not sure what's going to happen. Are they going to get caught? The prison guard's going to come out and catch them in the act? It's suspenseful. It's exciting. And I think that's a really interesting position to put the player in. Put them someplace where they're not sure if they should be there. What are they supposed to do? Are they doing the right thing? Is somebody going to come out and shoot them in the face? I don't know. They don't know. And I think that type of suspense is what makes games interesting, keeps the action going, and keeps the fun going. I mean, if I'm in a game and I'm not sure what's going to happen next, heck, I'll take that. I'd love to play a game like that. And that's what's going on with the jump at the beginning of this section. People say they hate jumps to ladders, and that they suck and they're no fun. And I don't know, maybe they're right, but I like them. But this jump reinforces that anything can happen in the game. You're set up to expect to be able to bridge a gap, but that's something that this game will challenge you with, so that you can move on and climb up a ladder, and that you just have to learn to master jumping. But then in the next section, we break the damn pipe you're standing on and throw you down in a pit full of leeches. How's that for meeting your expectation?
I guess that must be this section. Well, again, you've already told me what's going to happen.
This is one of those situations where there's definitely complicated solutions to simple problems. At least in a modern game engine, this puzzle would be pretty simple to set up with some physics. But Half-Life 1 doesn't have any physics. Gold Source doesn't support that. At least to the respect that this puzzle tries to fake. So here, it's just a big smoke and mirrors show trying to fake that with a bunch of crazy entity work. So the two boxes that are trapped at the bottom are just two trains. They move on a predetermined track. Now the funny part about how this grate works in releasing the boxes is that behind the scenes, hidden in the wall, there's a laser beam. This laser beam is shooting into a brick, and on the other side of the brick is a turret. And as you turn the little handle, the brick starts to move. When the brick is able to move just far enough, the laser beam passes and hits the target on the other side. The laser beam does damage, and when it hits that target, it causes an event to fire, telling the box to move and float upwards. Now, all of this is possible because there's a special entity that allows the movement.
I need it goes up a bit. Max that out.
Of a piece of geometry to be tied in to relationship to a turning handle. It lets this block move in conjunction with that. And so simply by adjusting the relationship of that laser beam and target to this moving block, you can time it so that an event will fire the moment that block moves out of the way at a very specific time, and in this case causing the buoyant boxes that are trains tied to these tracks to then be fired to move. Now, disregarding the complicated scripting to get those boxes to float up, you then have the entity work to track their state. So once the player has released these boxes, there's special entities that are tracking whether the water is in its lowered or raised position, and which state those boxes are in. Now, if the boxes have already been released, they're told to actually float and move to another position. Because, of course, they're not physics-based. They don't float. They're just trains on a rail. Now, if they haven't been released by the player yet, and they raise the water, then the tracks of those trains are changed. So when the player releases the boxes for the first time, they float all the way to the highest position. And all of that's just part of the scripting involved to get a simple puzzle where the player pulls a lever and some boxes float up to the surface.
Going up. Chapter 2. Turret unloads. Shit. Commentary.
This is one of my favorite little sections of Caged, behind the scenes and the walls of the prison. A lot of it goes back to some of the things I really enjoy the most about prison movies and escapes, is seeing the prisoner figure out how to probe the system for weaknesses, how they're working around security, feeling uncomfortable, not sure whether they're going to get caught, or how exactly they're going to escape. And in this section, I tried to recreate that feeling, presenting the player with an unknown number of choices and dangers, making them test the security and find the areas where it's weak. I think a lot of games, a lot of modern games, have a really hard time making the player feel uncomfortable, and I'm not sure why that is. Games often would handhold the player through a section like this, or not allow the player to feel uncomfortable, or not allow them to not know what to do. It's really a shame that we've seen a trend of games moving away from it, because it's a really exciting feeling, really emotional feeling for the player to have. And it's something that keeps the player from feeling like they're moving linearly from A to B, and instead solving problems in their own way with their own creativity.
Warning. Turret prison wellness system offline.
Hello. Yes, I've got to go.
Warning. Riot alarm activated. All personnel secure cell blocks.
That music.
There's a great little trick here in the armory with all the weapons hanging on the wall. Half-Life doesn't support actually positioning any of the weapon models in any position you like. They basically can lay on the floor and that's it. So in the armory, there's a bunch of weapons hidden under the floor that you can't see. And when you pick them up, they're set to trigger different models that are positioned on the wall and turn them off to give the simulation that you've picked them up off the wall. There's all these little tricks like this in the Half-Life engine that you kind of have to do because it's old and it couldn't support all of the things that a modern game engine can support. But I like all of that. All of that's texture. It's what makes working in an older game engine fun and interesting. There's different challenges to overcome. And I like finding those creative ways of solving those simple problems with overly complicated solutions. Across the room there's the lockdown status board with a little callback to the cell that you escaped from, and I always liked that. It was something from the original Caged. Then across the other side we have the priority alerts. And I always like to try and add little touches of humor. I don't know. Cruel sustenance pump error floats my boat. I think it's funny. One of the little quirks of Gold Source when Half-Life first shipped and mods for Half-Life were new was that getting music into a mod into the Gold Source engine wasn't really possible. The music for Half-Life shipped on the disc. It was on the CD.
Yes, I remember.
And as you'd play the game, the disc would be spun up and the game would fire off to play some music and it would pick a track from the CD. It was a dual burnt CD. It had music on one half and data on the other. So if you wanted to have high quality music, you couldn't put an MP3 on there. MP3s were new. Napster was a thing. Like they were a new thing in the world of technology and consumerism. So if you wanted to have music in your Half-Life level, you put it in a wave, and it was compressed down to 8-bit mono, and it sounded absolutely terrible. Now, because Half-Life played the music off the CD you couldn't distinguish between what CD was in the drive. It would just play a track from whatever disc happened to be in there. And back then, I shipped a mod called Big Lolly. And a year or so after it shipped, I got an email from a guy who had played it. He said he really loved the game. He loved using the giant lollipop to smash gingerbread men, but he was even more excited that the game featured a soundtrack to AC/DC. And isn't it amazing that AC/DC's his favorite band too? I never had the heart to tell him he just left his CD in the drive.
Was that a grenade? I think he's...
Attention. Incident. Personnel report to cell block E.
F6 quick.
Intercom. Repair services requested in processing facility.
Here's got the crossbow. Hello? More commentary.
I really do think that playing with expectations is one of the best ways to make games interesting. And playing with those expectations brings out interesting emotions in the player. The elevator ride here is a place where often you'd see someone set up a cheap scare with some baddies or some kind of trap in the elevator. And I chose not to do it. It seemed like a great place to crank the tension and suspense to 11, and at the same time give the player some downtime and a breather from all the action. Inaction can be just as interesting as action, and the uneasiness created in the player waiting for the elevator ride and the unknown at the end of it is what I think makes a really interesting emotional response. It's one of these sections in a game where I think if a producer and a publisher were to, or if a playtesting group from the publisher would run through the area, you get back some lame bug about how Nothing's going on here, and it's boring, and why would I just want to sit there? There's no action. And they would be missing the whole point, which is that there isn't any action, and that's what makes it interesting. At least I think that makes it interesting. You can't be shooting people in the face every second of the whole game. Or maybe you can, I don't know. Maybe it's a sign that I'm a bitter old game dev.
Loading.
Announcement. Improper operation of exercise blocks will result in elimination of accumulated reward credits.
Blood loss detected.
I love fucking detailing spaces like this. You have so many opportunities in the ceilings to create a story and make the environment feel bigger than it actually is. You'll see a lot of spaces where people just kind of cap off the top of a room and move on in the way that they've detailed an area. And I love like adding all these different little pipes and ductwork and telling a story with it. In the next hallway, there's this whole sense that there's a larger system of catwalks and passageways. The facility is much more grand than the player is experiencing themselves. And making these areas gives you all these amazing little problems to solve. The light streaming in through the windows above is a complete hack. It's like the biggest fucking hack in the universe. There's actually no light, of course, on the other side of the windows. And the windows are just illuminated by emissive panels of geometry hanging in front of the windows. And the God rays shooting through are a separate set of geometry. And the reflection of light on the opposite side of the wall isn't even run by the lighting pass in the engine. It's a separate sheet of polygons that are ever so slightly glowing to give the illusion that the light has come through the window. And I love figuring out all these different ways to make those things come to life. And that's what makes spaces like this so exciting to work on. You can create a living world that the player can pass through.
Subsection T4. Maintenance requested in Grill Pump Control, North Cog.
Shower rooms. Obey all guard orders, one prisoner per shower, no plumbing or fixtures, no escape plan, no grueling shower area, no soap without breath, no diving.
at elevator bank D02.
Oh.
Attention.
Red blood insertion.
Ammunition depleted.
Anyone else want some?
Vulture detected.
Oh. Commentary.
The guard room here is an example of loopback gameplay, which is essentially a way to telegraph to the player where they can go before they actually go there. And it's also a way to give the player tools to orient themselves in the universe in which they're playing. So here the player can see into the guard booths, into some of the areas they're going to get access to once they find their way through the shower room. And if they happen to go through the shower room before they actually enter this space, they can see an area which they didn't yet encounter, and later on from the guard towers they can come back into this space to have an additional experience. And I've always felt this is one of the best items in a designer's toolbox. One of the crucial things about it is it helps give the player the feeling that they're not on a rail, and that their destiny is in their own hands. There's like this magical point in first-person shooters and games that require some amount of puzzle work and critical thinking, where when the player solves a puzzle or gets from A to B or meets a challenge, they feel like they got themselves there. They were the ones that figured out how to get through that challenge, and they feel a sense of excitement and ownership over that solution, when really in reality there was only one solution to begin with. And the loopback, which shows the player the breadth of their options and what their experience could or might be, is a critical way to create that experience for the player.
Why are you leaving me here?
Announcement. Prisoners reporting cell-rate violations. Received.
Mr. Collins.
Warning. Vending machine malfunction.
Back this way. Commentary.
In the original version of Cage from 2002, the battle here in the prison yard was the finale. It was the end of the level. And it was always like a marriage that was never consummated. It just didn't quite hit the mark for what it needed to be. It was never designed as a proper finale. It never pushed the player to that peak, to that limit. So now it's used as a fight before the finale, and it sets the player up, and it foreshadows that there's greater challenges still yet to come. My favorite thing about this space is that it changes. The player's given the ability to explore it in a non-hostile setting. Once you eliminate the guards from the towers, you can move around the space and get a feel for it. And later on, it completely changes with the prison control that comes in. And I really enjoy a space like this. It's a jungle gym. It's a choose-your-own-adventure. And I love how it works now as an appetizer for the finale. After you go through the cargo doors, you hear that music, and you just know shit's gonna get fucking crazy. Another personal favorite part of this space in the yard here is kind of just what it is. It's a prison yard that's located next to the exit to the prison. I don't really know what kind of prison would actually be in it, but I think it's pretty hilarious. I don't know, maybe it comes from movies like The Shawshank Redemption or other prison films where you kind of see the guys hanging out in the yard and the bus rolls in and the fresh fish get off. I don't know, they're usually in close proximity. But I'm not sure the front door is ever actually part of the wall of the prison yard.
That will change ahead. Chapter 4. Blast!
I just love the music when the doors open here. It just makes you feel like you want to just charge out, guns blazing. It's exactly the feeling that I wanted to have come through in this finale. The helicopter coming by, keeping pressure on you, feeling like you can't stop. I often associate different music with the different projects I've worked on. It's interesting, the first game I worked on for the Xbox, Men of Valor, I always start thinking about German techno, because I was really into industrial music at the time. And for Team Fortress 2, working on Hightower, I think the whole time I listened to Depeche Mode. So every time I hear one of their songs, I always think about developing that. I think about the time I started at Valve is when I really got into synthwave and outrun music. And that's when I found out about Razorhawk. I really started liking his music. I think I bought a couple of his first albums, and I just thought he was great, along with a bunch of other tracks in the genre. I recorded some of Laserhawk's stuff to cassette tape, because that's all I had in my Volvo. And I'd make these trips, driving from Seattle to Portland, to go play pinball tournaments, and I'd listen to his music the whole way down there. And one day out of the blue, I got this email from some guy named Garrett Hayes. And as I'm reading it, he says, "Hey, I'm looking through my receipts for my Laserhawk purchases, and I saw your name on it. Are you Kaylee George, like the one who plays a bunch of pinball? I'm really into pinball, and I've seen all your videos." And it turns out that Laserhawk was a pinball fan, and I'm a pinball fan, and we both play competitive pinball, and we never knew it. And as we got to talking, he's telling me he's my fan, and I'm telling him I'm his biggest fan. And we've been friends ever since.
Damn it!
I just love the music when the doors open here. It just makes you feel like you want to just charge out, guns blazing. It's exactly the feeling that I wanted to have come through in this finale. The helicopter coming by, keeping the pressure on you. associate different music with the different projects I've worked on. It's interesting, the first game I worked on for the Xbox, Men of Valor, I always start thinking about German techno, because I was really into industrial music at the time. And for Team Fortress 2, working on Hightower, I think the whole time I listened to Depeche Mode. So every time I hear one of their songs, I always think about developing that band. I think about the time I started at Valve when I really got into synthwave and outrun music. And that's when I found out about Laserhawk. I really started liking his music. I think I bought a couple of his first albums, and I just thought he was great, along with a bunch of the other artists around him. I recorded some of Laserhawk stuff to cassette on my Volvo, making trips to Seattle and Portland to go play pinball tournaments. And I'd listen to his music the whole way down there. And one day out of the blue, I got this email from some guy named Garrett Hayes. And as I'm reading it, he says, "Hey, I'm looking through my receipts for my Laserhawk purchases, and I saw your name on there. Are you Kaylee George, like the one who plays a bunch of pinball? I'm really into pinball, and I've seen all your videos." And it turns out that Laserhawk and I we both played a bunch of pinball, and we never knew it. And as we got to talking, I'm his biggest fan, and we've been friends ever since. I just love the music when the doors open here. It just makes you feel like you want to just charge it. Exactly the feeling that I want to have come through this finale. The helicopter coming by, keeping pressure on the head. Feeling like you can't stop. I often associate different music with the different projects I've worked on. It's interesting, the first game I worked on for the Xbox, Men of Valor, I always start thinking about German techno. Hightower. I think associate different music with the different projects I've worked on. It's interesting, the first game I worked on for the Xbox, Men of Valor, I always start thinking about German techno, as I was really into industrial music at the time. And for Team Fortress 2, working on Hightower, I think the whole time I was in Depeche Mode. So every time I hear one of their songs, I always think about developing that band. I think about the time I started at Valve. Outrun music. And that's when I found out about Laserhawk. I really started liking his music. I think I bought a couple of his first albums, and I just thought he was great, along with a bunch of the other artists that he got. I recorded some of Laserhawk's stuff on cassette tape, because that's all I had in my Volvo, and I'd make these trips, driving from Seattle to go play pinball tournaments, and I'd listen to his music the whole way down there. And one day out of the blue, I got this email from some guy named Garrett Hayes. And as I'm reading it, it says, Laserhawk purchases, and I saw your name on there. Are you Kaylee George, like the one who plays a bunch of pinball? I'm really into pinball, and I've seen all your videos. And it turns out that Laserhawk was a pinball fan, and I'm a pinball fan, and we both like competitive pinball, and we never knew it. And as we got to talking, he's telling me he's my fan, and I'm telling him I'm his biggest fan, and we've been friends ever since. The sequence here where the guards shoot through the door is absolutely an homage to the original Half-Life 1, where they blow holes through the vent you're in. I remember when I first saw that, just gushing over it with my brother, and telling how awesome it was when they shoot the holes through the vents and it comes crashing down and the light streaming through, and holy shit. It was like at the time, that effect was just fucking mind-blowing. And of course it's like super primitive, but it's still effective, I like it. There's a visceral reaction to the effect of the carnage or threat that's going to come at you. It felt like the really great spot to throw it into Caged. In this control room there used to be a number of pickups for ammunition for the rocket launcher, and in testing we found that players were confused as to why that was there. They felt like there should be a rocket launcher close by, but they kept searching and scouring the first two floors of the complex here, and they would never proceed up the ladder to find a rocket launcher on the third floor. And it's interesting because usually it's nice to use them to foreshadow and have that Pavlovian experience in your mouth watering with the rocket launcher that you noticed to come. In this case, it was just too early. The foreshadowing was just not played enough, not close enough to the rocket launcher. So the decision was made to pull the ammo and put it next to the rocket launcher itself, as there wasn't a more appropriate place for it to exist. I'm not sure I'm quite happy with the control room and how it plays. I don't know. Something about pressing the button and then just walking back and opening the windows doesn't quite work. Seems like there needs to be a puzzle here where you go into a grate and climb through some ductwork and complete some kind of puzzle to activate the switch in the console. But the whole idea with this level is to keep the pace, keep the player moving, keep the action. Anything beyond what was here, slow that down, doesn't even have quite the same feeling. Still not sure if I like it, but it's good enough.
Attention. Armored window power online.
Swiss cheese effect for multiplayer games. And it's kind of like if you have combat or a situation going on, and it's just too much, the player can't handle everything that's being thrown at them. There's too many points of danger. The visual fidelity of what the player sees is just Swiss cheese. They're playing whack-a-mole with threats. This ending fight. Originally there were way more enemies here. There were the guards themselves pulled up in jet boats. Their automated guns were firing. It was just too much to handle. It was much too difficult for players, and it resulted in players dying and retrying over and over again to finish the game. And that wasn't fun. This last level is supposed to be about fast-paced escape, and a finale of kicking ass and explosions. That highlights an important point, which is designed by Elimination. Successful, iterating, and a content that didn't bring it out. There's a saying that players won't miss what doesn't ship, and it's absolutely true. Sometimes taking things out of the game, things that aren't working, is so much more successful and leads to better ideas and better gameplay than trying to stick with an idea that was failed from its concept. One of the big problems with this ending was getting players to actually run to the boat. Like how are players supposed to know the boat to jump in the jet? And the term hit it with a hammer absolutely applied here. Once the text at the beginning of the chapter was changed to jet boat escape, players no longer had any question about what they were supposed to do and immediately ran to the boat when presented with the option. And sometimes it's blunt force trauma that gets the job done.
No turning back.
Blood loss detected.
The hell? It was turning back actually.
Warning. Escape imminent. Final countermeasures activated. Prison thermonuclear auto disrupt engaged. Detonation will commence in 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
Bastard!
Warning. Escape imminent. Final countermeasures activated. Prison thermonuclear auto disrupt engaged. Detonation will commence in 10 seconds. 9.
Oh man, if I had a cigarette boat, I'd like to think I'd ride off into the sunset blasting Laserhawk. The whole idea for this scene came from this song, I promise, and it just felt so fitting to have the game end in some sort of Miami Vice cutscene. I'll shut up now. Let's listen to that awesome track. Thanks for playing.
Had to turn it up for the commentary. Half-Life Caged. Thanks for watching, see you next time.